So I'm going to try and take you on a emotional roller coaster of philosophical come practical innovation. And I work for a company, I don't own it, so let's just make that clear, called Mubaloo, based here in Bristol, app development agency, etc. And I joined 2 years ago. And it was all a bit odd, actually, because I met the CEO in a coffee shop, and he said, "Have you heard about this?" And I was like, "No." He said, "Do you want to try?" I said, "Yes." And then I started on Monday. And then I was given a desk. And I pretty much just sat there with another guy who I hadn't met, and he said, and we were sort of given some directive to give value to this business that we're working in. It's an SME, right? So it was all a bit weird because I'd never had a job before, and I was 30 years old. And my mum had always said, you know, "Mike, when are you going to get a real job?" And apparently I now have one. So this is a good step in the right direction. And what I really want to talk about is how we've gone about innovating, but actually not just us, sort of every other company or human that's done it or is doing it or wishes to do it. And we're going to sort of continue to talk about that all the way through. So I'm going to start off with a story about a very, very good friend of mine who is a researcher in tropical medicine. I'm no scientist, I'm no genius, so I'm going to do him a massive disservice. So I'm not going to mention his name. And what he was telling me, I mean, we're talking a couple of years ago now, he was telling me how they were doing some research into a given disease in a local community, and they'd sort of found that it was, you know, predominantly to do with infection in the water. And so the obvious approach for them was to provide irrigation and a fresh water source. So this makes perfect sense. However, the outcome of this wasn't necessarily that the reduction in people contracting this disease went down as we may have expected. It actually stayed exactly the same in the first instance. You kind of think, well, why? Why did that happen initially? And it happened because it was not that we didn't put this innovative product service into this local community, because they did. It was more to do with the behavioral change element of it. And how people were stuck in habit. And I'd like to just put a question out. I don't think I've ever heard of a successful innovation that no one uses. And I'll just let that sink in. Because, you know, we see innovation. Everyone's got to be doing it. It's a necessary thing, apparently. And you run the risk of failing, do we not? You know, no one likes to fail, but I think presentations so far have said, well, it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail, but actually I don't really like using the term fail. I think like we try stuff and then we get some evidence back and then we learn from it, and learning is always positive, I think. So we never really fail, we just try and we try again, and maybe we try something slightly different and try again. And you keep going like this and like this and like this and like this and like this, and eventually you start to get things that work and people start to use them. And you might make some money for your company, and then you end up in a sexy role like I've got, which isn't all that sexy, by the way, but that's again, have we got hours or not? No. Okay. So what I want to put out there is I want to put out this idea of perspective. And you've seen and heard talks today, and everyone has a different perspective, right? So you've got massive corporations juggernauts who've got loads of money but still can't seem to innovate, right? And what do? They've got a strategy. They've got a different strategy because their perspective is different. So they might look into the market and go, where are those cool startups? Where are those cool little companies like ours that we might want to acquire those services because now it makes us do things a little bit better and we get a better proposition out to the market, right? So from a big entity like that, they've got a different perspective to the startup community down here, who by definition are innovating, right? They're trying to cobble things together or create something new to bring out to the market. So the first thing that I want to sort of put out there is that you have to understand what your perspective is. Get some. right? Get some perspective and start to think about, okay, what is it that I'm trying to achieve? What constraints have I got? And how are we going to maximize our situation, right? And we don't need to look at everybody because they're all got different perspectives. And actually, if you're a bit of a bubblehead like me, where you've got loads of little things going around in your head, it actually reduces those and the voices disappear. The voices in your head start to go away when you gain some perspective on what it is you're trying to achieve. So let's assume that we have some perspective, and we've looked at the idea of, okay, what do I do as a startup versus what do I do as a big corporation? And we've seen research in here, and we've seen people who are spending 10, 15, 20 years with groundbreaking things that come to the market. So there's some of the differences there is time. Now, if you were to apply the idea of 8 years or 3 years or 5 years to our CEO, Mubaloo, you'd be out of a job in about 3 days flat. We haven't got that sort of time, right? We're a small, medium enterprise. We're rapid. We need to look at the revenue, and we need to make sure that our business is functional and stable, yet we have to innovate at the same time. So that's difficult, right? In the startup world, I have to make sure that what I'm building is going to be adopted, and then I have to get my rounds of funding, and then I have to evolve and grow and build. So once you've got this idea of where you are and where you're sitting and how you're trying to move things forward, you've got a platform of which to start. So we've now got a perspective, and hopefully you've got the space to do it. Because if we don't have the space to do it, we get caught up in other things. So I was very fortunate, and hats off to our CEO, that said basically, go and sit over here in this room and do something and come back to us and keep coming back to us. So I was given quite a lot of space. Now that doesn't always work for some people. So if you look at Google, everybody is expected to innovate. And as someone mentioned 3M earlier, 15% of their work time to innovate. Mubaloo can't do that. Right? It's out of the question. What we can do, though, is we can allow people to contribute, and we can allow space to certain people to start to think and things to percolate, and that's a great starting point for our situation. And for other situations, it's different. That doesn't mean one is better than the other, it just means it's circumstantial. So, okay, we've got some space, we've got some perspective, and now what happens? Well, what happens now is driven by this kind of idea of getting some objective out of here. So there was a guy called Henry Ford, quite famous, I think, and he said, if I ask the people what they want faster horses. And yeah, if you'd asked them that, they probably would have said, I want a faster horse, yeah. But what happens if you'd have asked them something slightly different and said, how would your life be made better? How would things be made easier for you? And they might have responded and said, I'd like to get from A to B faster. It might be the fact that actually the faster horse is actually the answer, but it might not be. What's interesting about the quote and interesting about rephrasing it is that one has how in it and one doesn't. So that, do you want a faster horse? Yes, I do. There's how. Here's your horse. In what would make your life easier, get to A to B, we've now got a challenge or an objective or a problem to solve, but there's no how yet. There's no need for how right now. So we take this challenge, we take this idea, and we start to work on it, start to work on solving this problem. So then, if Henry probably didn't ask anybody anything, but had gone, well, A to B, we could potentially get there faster if we did it like this, and then take it out to the market and people start to use it, and what a successful innovation it was. Now, innovation in the dictionary, which is a funny place to start when you go, what is innovation and what's the definition of? And the first bit that I found, which I didn't spend much time doing, by the way, was the process of innovating. Well, that's about as useful as a chocolate fire guard, isn't it? So thanks for that, dictionary. That's going to make my life so much easier. The second point was, it's a new process, service, or product. All right, fabulous. Still can't do anything with that either, particularly. Which is why you see many people with different opinions on what innovation is and how to approach it. And you may have seen like these new ideas about how we go about it. So this idea of agile and iterative, all fancy words, which basically means like try, get some evidence back, don't make the same mistake twice, go over here and try this, and just build up your solutions. And some of the stories that you've heard today have been very much this idea of try, test, validate, understand, move forward. But we can do full circle back to our disease story where what was really required is the understanding of the local community and educating them on what this innovation is going to do for them and trying to shift the behavioural change, which, by the way, is not an easy thing to do. We come full circle because actually the starting point might well be to go out and have a word with some people and get in the heads of your potential audience, user, whatever other term you can call the people that are going to utilise your service, product, innovation, whether they're the employees of your company or whether they're people that you're going to sell to. And so I want just to sort of finish up in the idea that I was known by my mother as a hobbyist, in that I didn't get this real job thing to start with. I'm thankful I did, by the way, so to anyone out there who's thinking I'm just going to go and be a hobbyist, please don't do that. And I started just sort of doing things, right? I'd build that and blow that up or play with this or whatever. But actually I was always able to survive financially. And I did that for 6-7 years. Right? One day I was coaching little children how to play tennis. The next day I was building a website for a friend of mine. It didn't really matter. It was just getting ideas and building on what was going on. And I did have a go at it company-wise, like having my own company and starting something up. And I was lucky enough to go to university in the USA and play tennis and do electronics at the same time. And as a result of this, there was this bit where we used to do loads of weightlifting, which I hated. As you can tell, I'm huge. And there was this bit where we did lots of running, which I was better at because I was smaller. But no one measured the running bit, right? So I could never say I was any better than anybody else. Whereas the big guys were like, yeah, look, I was sort of lifting a lot more than I used to. Oh, this is annoying. So I thought maybe I can use my electronic stuff to measure this movement stuff and then make myself feel better about myself. At the end, I came out of university. Me and a friend decided to build this. We went down to Maplin and got a whole load of cheap components and built something. And we spent the best part of 5 years flogging this out the back of a van all over the world. And it kept us alive for that amount of time. And we made a pact, basically, that said, we can't be in debt, ever. So we need to get ourselves out of it. And you know how much we made? £750 each. 6 years, what a salary, right? But the point was we were trying, we were iterating, we were moving, we were building product. Good job the dictionary definition doesn't say that it has to pay, does it? It doesn't say you have to make millions of pounds. We would like that, of course, but let's carry on. Keep working, keep moving, keep iterating and all the rest of it. And now I'm lucky enough to be in this role at Mubaloo, where we have taken new concepts that have come out by the likes of Apple, and we've built products off the back of them, and we've been relatively successful over the last few years as a company, and we will plow on into the next year looking at different ways that we can innovate. And what we do is we innovate for our clients, right? So we don't necessarily innovate ourselves, we innovate for others, and we help others to innovate, which is, again, it goes back to this idea of what is your perspective on innovation and what are you trying to achieve. So, in summary, we're looking at getting a perspective. We're looking at finding the space, giving yourself the space to do it, to try something. We're talking about iterating and testing and validating and not in short bursts of time. And ultimately, innovation is fun, it's incredibly stressful, but it's absolutely necessary. Thank you very much.